I'm Martha Caldwell, and I never imagined I'd be deliberately abandoned. It started as a family getaway to Hawaii. Becca, my daughter-in-law, called it an essential break for everyone. She crafted matching shirts for the children and created one for me, reading Vacation Nana in vivid pink lettering. I detested it, but wore it regardless. At the terminal, everything seemed orchestrated yet hurried. Rebecca continuously watched her timepiece. Daniel, my son, remained nearly silent. The children stayed absorbed in their devices. Nevertheless, I followed along, maintained my smile, and attempted to stay unobtrusive. Beyond security, Rebecca approached me wearing a forced smile and declared, "Mom, perhaps you should wait in the lounge? We'll handle baggage check and boarding passes, then return for you." She touched my arm not affectionately, but with the condescending gentleness reserved for someone no longer considered vital. I agreed and positioned myself where instructed. Between a malfunctioning television and a weathered artificial plant, I remained. The lounge filled and emptied repeatedly. I observed travelers hurrying to terminals, embracing family members, clutching coffee like salvation. 1 hour elapsed. Then 2. I requested the desk clerk page Daniel. No answer. After the 4th hour, I ceased monitoring the entrance. I understood. At 5:00, I sought assistance from the attendant. I provided Daniel's complete name. She entered something into her computer, then gazed at me compassionately. They boarded the 1:45 p.m. departure to Honolulu, ma'am. That aircraft has already left. I acknowledged this. Then I asked her to repeat it. Not an error, not coincidence. My own child had abandoned me. I entered the restroom and secured myself in a stall not to weep, but to sit somewhere nobody would inquire about my well-being. I possessed no remaining tears, only silence. Upon emerging, the airport seemed transformed. The commotion quieter, the illumination dimmer. I positioned myself before the departure display, with the stillness that arrives when you no longer feel compelled to justify anything to anyone. I didn't collapse. I made a decision. And that's where my journey truly begins. I examined the departure board like a menu with unlimited time. Rows of destinations illuminated and faded: Chicago, Seattle, Phoenix. Then I noticed it. Portland, departure at 7:35 p.m. I'm uncertain why that destination called to me. Perhaps because I hadn't visited in decades. Maybe because it's where I first learned cycling. Or possibly because it represented the complete opposite of Hawaii. I approached the counter with unfamiliar composure. "1 ticket to Portland," I stated. "Round trip?" "No," I responded. "One way." I used a debit card connected to an old account I'd maintained since before Daniel's marriage. It contained just enough for the fare, several nights in a motel, and perhaps something more. A fresh start. I powered off my phone. Nobody had called. Nobody had messaged. Naturally, they hadn't. I discarded the pink shirt labeled Vacation Nana into a waste bin near the gate. No ceremony, no theatrics, simply finished. The boarding process proceeded quietly. Nobody questioned why I traveled alone. Nobody glanced twice at me. For once, I appreciated being unnoticed. I watched city lights disappear through the aircraft window, considering how peculiar it was that hours earlier, I believed I was heading toward paradise. But that was never reality. That version of paradise included strings, conditions, and a seat that was never truly mine. Now I traveled toward something authentic, something I selected. No schedule, no commitments, nobody waiting at the destination. I arrived in Portland slightly after 10:00 p.m. The atmosphere was moist and crisp with the fragrance of rain and pavement. I stepped outside, stood beneath the canopy, and took a deep breath. This wasn't escape. This wasn't rebellion. This was something entirely different. A beginning. I spent that initial night at a modest roadside motel on a street lined with closed storefronts and flickering neon displays. Room 207. The corridor smelled of bleach and something older dust perhaps, or forgotten memories. But the room was clean. One bed, one chair, one lamp. That sufficed. I didn't sleep extensively, but I rested. In the morning, I stood at the window with a cup of motel coffee, watching a woman in a pink robe walking her dog along the sidewalk. She appeared approximately my age, maybe stronger in the shoulders. I found myself wondering about her story, and for once, I didn't feel envious. I simply felt curious. By 9:00 a.m., I was walking through the neighborhood, absorbing unfamiliar corners and cracked sidewalks. My hip protested, but I continued moving. I stopped at a small bakery on a corner with a chalkboard outside advertising fresh scones. The woman behind the counter provided exact change and asked, "Are you new around here?" "I used to live here," I said. "A long time ago?" "Well," she replied, "welcome back." I didn't know if I was back, but her words felt warm. There was a bulletin board near the door with flyers and handwritten notices. Lost cat, guitar lessons, room for rent. That one captured my attention. It read in blocky, determined handwriting, "Private room. Quiet house, $400 a month. No drama, no nonsense. Call Joyce." I photographed the number. Later that afternoon, I called. The voice on the other end was raspy and direct. "How old are you?" she asked. 77. "You clean?" "Yes." "No boyfriends?" "Not in a long time." There was a pause. "Come by at 4, 2185 East Stafford. Bring cash for the first week." She hung up. At 4 precisely, I stood outside a faded blue house with chipped paint and a porch that appeared to have stories of its own. A cat stared at me from under a chair. The front door opened before I could knock. "You the old lady?" the woman asked, cigarette in hand. "I suppose I am," I said. She nodded and stepped aside. "Come in then. Let's see if we can tolerate each other." Joyce didn't ask questions. That was her gift. She showed me the upstairs room, small, simple. A twin bed, a dresser that leaned slightly to the left, and a wide window facing a tree with leaves beginning to yellow. It smelled faintly of lavender and old carpet. It was perfect. I paid her $100 in cash for the first week. She didn't count the bills, just folded them and slid them into her pocket. "You hungry?" she asked. I could eat. She prepared grilled cheese sandwiches and heated canned tomato soup. We ate at the kitchen table under a humming ceiling fan. She didn't inquire where I came from. I didn't offer it. "I hate eating alone," she said. That was enough. The following morning I woke early. The house creaked like it was settling old disputes. I made coffee before Joyce came downstairs, the kind that drips slowly and smells like a peaceful morning. By the third day, I started walking farther. Just a few blocks initially, then to a little corner cafe with a chalkboard sign outside. "Help wanted, morning shift." I stood there momentarily, staring at the sign. I hadn't worked in over 15 years, but I understood coffee. I understood early mornings. I understood how to keep things moving. Inside, the place was no frills. 3 booths, a counter, and a few bar stools with cracked red cushions. A young woman was cleaning the counter. She looked up when the bell chimed. "You hiring?" I asked. She called to the back. A woman with her hair in a messy bun and a name tag reading Heather stepped out. "You have experience?" she asked. "I've raised 3 kids, managed a household for 50 years, and never called in sick." Heather stared at me for a moment, then shrugged. "Trial shift tomorrow, 6 to 11. That night, I pressed the only blouse I owned that still held a crease. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I could still carry plates without trembling. By 5:45 a.m. the next morning, I was standing outside the cafe, hands in my coat pockets. It was dark. It was cold. It felt like something new. The trial shift was a blur of hot coffee, sticky syrup, and clinking plate. Heather didn't hover, but she observed. I moved slowly, but I didn't forget anything. I poured coffee with a steady hand, cleared tables without breaking stride, and smiled without forcing it. By 11:00 a.m., my feet ached and my back complained, but my mind was clear. "You did fine," Heather said, handing me a clean towel. "Just fine. You'll improve." She offered me the weekday morning shift. Minimum wage plus tips, no health insurance, no nonsense. It was more than adequate. Every day after work, I walked not far, just a few blocks in different directions. I discovered a thrift store with old coats, a bookstore that still smelled like paper and ink, and a small park with a wooden bench that creaked when you sat. One day, I entered the secondhand shop and told the girl at the counter I was seeking something warm. She smiled and helped me find a navy wool coat with deep pockets and a subtle herringbone pattern. It wasn't new, but it fit like it had been waiting for me. I paid in cash. She wrapped it in tissue paper like it was a gift. "You look sharp," she said. "I feel sharp," I replied. That night, I walked home in my new coat. Joyce was sitting on the porch with a mug of wine and her cat, Franklin. "Look at you," she said. "Classy lady." Only on Fridays. We ate canned chili and watched the news with the sound off. The heater rattled like it harbored a grudge. The cat snored on the armrest. It wasn't grand. It wasn't dramatic, but it was good. And for the first time in years, I felt like the life I was living actually belonged to me. A room, a job, a coat I'd chosen myself. Somewhere between silence and soup, something had shifted, and I wasn't returning. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. No return address. Just my name written in slanted, looping script I hadn't seen in years. I recognized it before opening it. Kieran, my grandson, the oldest, the only one who used to visit without being asked. The one who once built a birdhouse with me in the backyard, then painted it bright red and called it the coolest place in the whole yard. I sat on the edge of the bed and unfolded the letter carefully. It was brief, just a few lines. "Dad and Rebecca are freaking out. They said you disappeared. No one's heard from you. I've been checking every day. I miss you. Please let me know you're okay." He signed it Kieran and scribbled a phone number underneath a new one. I didn't cry, but something cracked open gently. I didn't call. Not that day, not the next. But I kept the letter in the drawer beside my bed, tucked between a paperback I'd never finished, and the envelope where I stored my cash tips. There are bonds that don't break, not even when the world rearranges itself around them. Kieran had never made me feel like a burden, never treated me like a favor someone forgot to return. He was just there. And in a life where so many had left or looked away, that kind of presence mattered more than words. I started checking the mailbox more frequently after that. I bought a better brand of tea and a new notebook, just in case I wanted to write back. I didn't feel ready to reach out, but I no longer felt invisible. One night, Joyce and I sat on the porch, watching the sky turn that soft purplish gray before rain. "You hiding or healing?" she asked suddenly. I looked down at my cup. "Both," I said. She nodded like that made perfect sense. Inside, the letter from Kieran waited, its folds softening from the number of times I had read it. I didn't need anything from Daniel or Rebecca anymore, but I wasn't ready to let go of the one person who had remembered me without being told to. Kieran's voice, even on paper, felt like an open door, and for the first time in weeks, I found myself wondering what it might be like to walk through it. The next envelope came with a Wilmington postmark. I recognized the handwriting immediately, not because it was neat, but because it had that same pressure Daniel always used when he was trying to control a situation without sounding controlling. Inside were 6 pages, dense, careful lines. No greeting, no warmth. "I can't believe you did this," it began. He accused me of making the family suffer. Said I'd ruined their vacation. Claimed Rebecca cried every night, that the kids were confused. That my silence was immature and unfair. There was not one word about the lounge. Not a mention of the hours I sat alone. The pages over my name. The trash can where I dropped the bright pink t-shirt. Just outrage that I dared to walk away. He ended the letter with, "We're willing to talk, but only if you're ready to be reasonable." Reasonable, as if decades of babysitting, grocery runs, birthday cakes, and quiet obedience had been unreasonable. I folded the letter and slid it back into the envelope. Joyce didn't ask what it said. She just poured me a second cup of coffee and nodded toward the window. "Storm's coming," she said. "It already has." A few days later, Kieran called. His voice was soft. "I heard Dad wrote to you." "He did. You going to respond?" "Not yet," I said. "Maybe not at all." He didn't argue, just said, "I get it." We talked about other things. His new part-time job at a bookstore, the kind of quiet he liked in the mornings. "Books don't yell at you," he said. We both laughed. The next morning, I burned Daniel's letter, 1 page at a time, over the sink. The paper curled and flaked into the drain like something finally letting go. Joyce raised an eyebrow when she saw the smoke curling from the kitchen. "I would have used the fire pit," she said. More satisfying. Later that week, a man in a charcoal suit waited outside the cafe. He stepped in just as my shift ended and introduced himself as Derek Sorensen, an attorney representing Daniel and Rebecca. "They're concerned," he said, "about your well-being. About your assets." "My well-being is excellent," I said, "and my assets are mine." He fumbled, tried to rephrase. I folded my apron neatly and placed it on the counter. "Tell them I'm not a pet they forgot to pick up. And there are no next steps unless I take them." Then I walked right past him out into the morning light. Joyce was waiting outside with her usual quiet patience. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said, because I was. That night, I wrote one final letter. Not to Daniel. Not to Rebecca. To myself. Just 3 lines. "I know what you did. I know what you didn't say. I'm not angry. I'm not coming back." Then I sealed it, added a stamp with a goldfinch on it, and walked it to the mailbox with a calm I hadn't felt in years. Sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision. The envelope arrived on a Thursday, but this one wasn't from Daniel or Rebecca. No sharp handwriting, no legal tone. It was from Kieran. Inside, just a simple note. "Grandma, I'm coming to Portland. I want to see you. I'm not bringing anyone. I just want to talk. I'll be at the Red Fern Motel on Maple, room 12, Friday and Saturday. If you want to come by, I'll be there. If not, I'll understand." There was no pressure in his words. No guilt. Just a door left open. I didn't rush. I took my time deciding. On Friday morning, I got dressed with quiet intention, not for anyone else. For myself. Navy coat, clean blouse, lipstick the color of dried cherries. The kind I used to wear when Derek and I would go out dancing in our early years. I didn't tell Joyce. I didn't need to. She saw the way I lingered by the mirror and only said, "You look ready." The Red Fern was clean but tired. A relic from another era. I knocked once. Kieran opened the door like he'd been standing behind it all morning. He was taller than I remembered. A little scruff on his jaw, the kind that says young but trying. His eyes were the same open, kind, watchful. "Hi, Grandma." "Hi, sweetheart." He didn't reach to hug me. He stepped back and let me in. The room smelled faintly of takeout and motel soap. Books were stacked on the desk, a telltale sign of who he was beneath all the family noise. We sat on the edge of the bed, not too close. Two people giving each other space before warmth. "I didn't know if you'd come," he said. I didn't either. He nodded like he understood exactly what that meant. We talked about his job at the bookstore, about the rain in Portland, about silence and what it gives you if you let it settle. "You're the only one," he said, "who ever made me feel enough just by being there." I reached for his hand. "You've always been enough. You still are." We didn't cry. We just sat in the quiet. Before I left, he handed me a small bundle wrapped in brown paper. "A book of poems," he said. "I underlined the ones that reminded me of you." That night, I read them all. One line stayed with me. "There are women who rise not from fire, but from forgetting who told them they couldn't." And I slept with the window cracked open. The wind was soft, like a second chance. The next morning, I walked to the bank. Same branch, same teller. Her name was Marie. She wore purple nail polish and always looked like she was one good story away from quitting her job. "I'd like to make a transfer," I said, sliding my ID across the counter. She nodded. "From which account?" I gave her the number of the small one I'd opened when Derek was still alive. The one Daniel never knew about. It wasn't much, but it was enough. "And the recipient?" "Kieran Harlow," I said, handing over the note he'd left with his banking details. "Just a little something. For books or groceries, or getting away if he ever needs to." Marie smiled. Not the fake kind, but the kind that comes from recognizing something good. "You're the first person I've seen send money without strings attached in a long time." "That's the point," I said. I left the bank lighter than I entered. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with pen and paper. One final letter, this time to Derek Sorensen, the lawyer. "To whom it may concern, there is no cause for further contact. I am of sound mind, in a safe environment, and under no duress. I have retained local counsel. Any future attempts to reach me will be considered harassment. Sincerely, Martha Caldwell." I signed it in ink and walked it to the post office the next morning. It wasn't anger. It wasn't defiance. It was the final cut of a rope that no longer held me. And I didn't flinch. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket across my knees and a warm cup of tea in my hands. Joyce didn't say anything. She didn't have to. We'd shared enough quiet to know what silence could hold. The moon was full and slow. Franklin the cat purred like a distant engine near my feet. Later, I went upstairs and pulled out a blank note card from the drawer. On it, I wrote a letter not to Kieran, not to Daniel, not even to myself. To the woman I'd become. "Dear me, you waited so long for someone to save you. You forgot you were the one holding the key. You didn't lose them. They let go. And you finally let go back. Look at the life that opened. Well done. Love me." I taped it to the inside of the dresser drawer, right behind the recipe cards I brought with me from Wilmington, just in case I ever forget again. So that's my story. I wasn't abandoned. I was released, and I didn't rebuild my life. I built something new. If this story found you at the right moment, don't wait for the perfect sign. Be your own. And if you do, come back and tell me. I'll be here.